There we go. They can see you now. Let's hear if your mics are live to the world. Just say hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
I'll come up.
Okay.
Working two sides of the room is a little complicated.
Okay. And then we're talking
Yeah.
to the camera.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
to both.
To
each other
we can
and
look
to
at
the
talk
camera a little bit.
we can turn, talk to each other, talk to the camera. Okay.
All right, welcome to Bird and Beckett. So, Jenna and I are here behind the scenes, so we'll stay well out of sight. But you've got Tamina Khan on the right and Kitty Costello on your right. Yes, is Kitty Costello. On your left, viewer, is Tamina Khan. So they're here to talk about the book Muslim American Writers at Home. It's centered in the back of the piano there. You can almost see it. If you really want to see it, you can come down to the bookshop, and we have copies that you can peruse and read and buy and all that stuff. Okay. So I'm just going to let them take it away. They know much more about the book than I do, so I think that's the thing to do. So thank you all very much for coming out. So the conversation will last till 11 o'clock, and then we'll get the store ready to open. We open at noon, so come on down. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, for all the years and years of supporting the community and helping us all get to know each other in this new venture of having these conversations on Sunday mornings that brings local people into each other's focus, and looking forward to this continuing and seeing what you do next. So before we begin to talk about the book, I just wanted to acknowledge that we're here on Ramaytush Ohlone territory, unceded territory, and just expressing gratitude for that, and acknowledgement of the descendants who are still here with us. Yes, it's always good to read, to acknowledge reading and whose territory we're in. Thank you. So Tamina Khan is here, one of the authors in the book, and she was going to start us off by reading from the very beginning of the Quran.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I'm wishing you peace and joy this morning. My name is Tamina Khan, and I'm going to recite the opening verses of the Quran, also called the Surah Fatiha. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
Thank you. So good to hear that sound that we don't hear a lot, unless you're a Muslim in North America. So really good to be treated to that. Thank you, and the blessing of it.
Yeah. Thank you, Kitty. Yeah.
Yeah. So we met at an event that you were hosting out at City College in your Poetry for the People class that was celebrating Maya Angelou.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was in the middle of gathering materials with the other editors for this book, and you read a poem that I would like to ask you to read now that addresses the changes that have happened. Like, you are American born, and you've seen things change in your lifetime in terms of how people treat Muslims and the attitudes towards Muslims. And
yeah, absolutely. And also in this poem, I'm also exploring, like who I am in the world as a Muslim, but as a Muslim in connection to other people. And so I think that was like the biggest growth for me as coming into adulthood it's not just me alone as a Muslim or even my community alone, but that we have connections. We can connect to the Latino community, to the Filipino community, the African American community. We have things in common. We can build solidarity. And in fact, just in terms of our own faith, that's what we have to do. is build connection and build solidarity and build and work on the oneness which is so endemic to our faith. So this poem, I wrote this poem after the 2016 election, and it's kind of, I guess you can call it an autobiography of sorts, beginning with 1979, which was a crucial year for me as a Muslim child in the wake of the Iranian Revolution and subsequent hostage crisis. So I'm going to read this poem. It's called Standing for Water. 1979, and we are there all over again. The seventh grader inside me goes from ambiguous brown girl who has to explain that Indian means being from India to Iranian. To be Muslim is no longer just avoiding pork at birthday parties. It now makes me Iranian. Someone from Iran. And they say Iran, but don't know what it is or where India is for that matter. And can anyone really find Santa Clara on the map? Our neighborhood is white, black, Mexican, and Filipino. And yet we all try to erase ourselves when together, silence the rhythms of our speech, water down the flavors of our food, hide our pain behind airbrushed masks, and speak only inside the private sanctuaries of our own homes. Iran. Public enemy number one, makes neighbors fly flags and yellow ribbons in the faces of those who do not belong. Soviet Union, USSR, not enemy, but adversary, worthy of being pronounced correctly. An empire strong but wrong and ugly, not beautiful like America. The nightly news counts the days that American hostages are held by revolutionary students in Iran. Students who overthrew the tyrannical Shah, who years later will say, maybe it was a bad idea taking hostages, drunk on the power they held over the superpower. Imam Khomeini is wise, whisper grown-up voices at Indian Muslim dinner parties. But he looks so mean, I think. Islamic Republic, they say, at last, a just society, mercy, compassion from God. America cannot tell them what to do. I get used to hiding in shadows while flags of the citizenship imposed by my birthplace are raised up high, smothering the words that connect us to home. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. I leave Santa Clara for Berkeley, where we build shantytowns to protest apartheid, march against United States proxy wars in Central America, organize for a free Palestine, and feel the political become personal, caffeinated, and armed with words. We raise our voices, silencing fear. When I help elderly immigrants prepare for their citizenship test, I tell them, America is not beautiful, and its power is ugly, but you are here, so be here, and live here, and speak your stories and your language. Keep your grandchildren close. Tell them who you are, who they are. And 2017 is 1979, is Japanese internment, is the Chinese Exclusion Act, is Jim Crow segregation, is every treaty broken with First Nations? But 2017 is also sanctuary. 5 centuries of resistance, and all of us standing up for Standing Rock. And we stand in the shadows of a settler colony that wants us assimilated or gone. But we walk in our own light as we weave our stories together into a multicolored tapestry and speak a symphony of languages, mathematical equations, stories, prayers to each other, to the divine, for water, for the water inside all of us.
Thank you, Tamina. Yeah, there's a through line about these events that shaped how people view the Muslims in this country and the world, and that was certainly a really key one, the taking of hostages in 1979. Let me just back up for a second and make clear I'm one of the editors of the book, and I'm pretty much the only non-Muslim working on the book, other than someone who, Joe Hakim, who allowed us to use some of the interviews he'd done with Palestinians here in the Bay Area. So I have been having my own little personal education at my laptop for the past couple years, and very, very happy and eager to share what I've learned, because we're so inundated with misconceptions, ignorance, wrong ideas. Like just about everything you see and hear in the media is not helpful and actually harmful. And it's just when other people are suffering oppression, it is, you can't relax around that. It doesn't feel good. So, everyone's liberation happens together. And I was approached by someone, one of the other editors in a online writing class, a therapeutic writing class, and she said, "I have an idea," and explained what she wanted to do to help counter the ignorance and violence and hatred, and to sow peace, to sow understanding and peace. And it was the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, maybe. Yeah, 2018 in the spring. And I was like, wow, that is a good idea. It's a really good idea, and gave me the feeling of, oh, I get to do something about what's happening here. So it was a real blessing to be offered this way, to be of help in this situation when such ever more disturbing things were happening. Well, anyway, I won't name them right now, but anyway, yeah, so that's how I became part of this project, and feel like I've taken in a whole lot that's just a very beginning of overturning my own ignorance. I'm certainly no expert on any of this, but really wanting, enjoying that the Muslim people represented in this anthology are now getting to talk to each other and hear each other's voices, validating their lives, feeling seen. We just had our first little celebration yesterday with the authors, and then the other side of that is for non-Muslims to, we are ignorant, and that happened to us. It wasn't our fault, but now there's this book that really will tell you a lot about what's going on in the hearts and minds of Muslims in the U.S. and Canada. So from this book's publishing onward, it's a kind of willful ignorance. If there is a way to begin to to hear what's inside people's minds that's not anything that you have ever been told by the media.
Yeah.
So that's my background with this. I wanted to, just in weaving these themes together, about some of the events that happened, but also bringing in this really central issue about women wearing the hijab, and how much that's been the source of violence, of people being attacked. The book itself is probably 3/4 women. That's just who responded, not because we decided to choose more women, but we received a lot more things from women, and I think that's because women who wear the hijab have been under attack a lot more. Or, you walk into a cafe, Valerie Behieri, one of the other editors, like you walk into a cafe in Toronto and somebody says, "Are you a terrorist?" That's what life feels like. So anyway, I just wanted to read an excerpt from one of the interview excerpts that was included in the book, from Lena Barakat, that's called "You're Not Looking Enough." Just read a couple paragraphs here. "On my dad's side, I'm the only grandchild who wears a hijab, and I think there are 17 of us. On my mom's side, I'm the only one besides her who does. So why do I do it? My mom put it on when she was 27. I put it on 10 years ago when I was 16 years old. I was young, It was a decision I made. It took me a while. I was at a point when I really wanted more for myself. I identified the values and character that I wanted to uphold and live for the rest of my life, and I saw the hijab as a form of insurance towards that. The hijab comes with a level of persona. You don't see hijabis at a club, if you know what I mean. Those are the kinds of things I remember thinking at 16 years old. I can go this way or I can go that way. It's transformed significantly since then. I don't wear it for those reasons anymore. Now it's become more of a political statement as well. I've been told so many times that I'm very approachable. Random people ask me questions that they tell me they wouldn't have been comfortable to ask otherwise. They tell me I'm very easy to talk to and open, down to earth. I break a lot of stereotypes in their mind. A hijabi's not supposed to be running a marathon. A hijabi's not supposed to be an outspoken, proud, independent feminist. Hijab and feminism don't sound right in the same sentence to many people. But I remind them why it does, especially in the 9/11 era. I found it necessary, my way of contributing in a small way. And then later on in the piece, she says, I'm really no different from many other Muslim women. I didn't just become this way by myself out of nowhere. I have a community of very like-minded women, feminists, individuals who wear the hijab. I'm really no different from them. My husband had never seen anyone like that before, and most people haven't. I feel like sometimes I'm just here to say, you're not looking enough.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and the historic events that have driven this,
right,
like reclaiming this identity in a stronger way. So you, Tamina, sometimes I've seen you with a hijab on, and I've mostly seen you without, and you put it on for a moment here, and some women do, and some women don't, and maybe you can tell us more about what your culture has been around that, and
no, absolutely. So it's the thing is, hijab is not any one thing to any one person. It's really, it has multiple and many layers of significance, and for some women, it's just really what how the women in their family dress, and for some women it's a conscious choice. And I've had Muslim sisters who've put on the hijab in their teens and stopped wearing it in their 20s and 30s and 40s even. And then I have sisters who have who started wearing it in their 30s and 40s. Never wore it in their teens and 20s. And and some of us don't wear it at all. And I would say I pretty much don't wear it at all. It's just not something that's my mom doesn't wear it, my grandmother didn't wear it, and it's not part of our culture. It's not part of our expression, but I have just, I think it's a beautiful thing. I think the hijab is really beautiful, and I have friends who I have utmost respect for my sisters who do wear it. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's elegant, and I especially I teach at City College, and I've seen various expressions of hijab in the years, and I think it's actually pretty cool when young women are wearing skinny jeans in their hijab, because that wouldn't have happened in my day. Hijab meant something really formless, and now there's fashion and elegance and and some sass to it, and I really do appreciate that. I'd like to read a poem of mine that speaks to that. So when people ask me, over the years, over my my years, my 50-some years as a Muslim in the United States, I always get asked, what about hijab? What about that's so oppressive, the way Muslim women dress. And my answer to that, it took me a while to come to this answer, but my answer to that is okay, you can say what you want. Yeah, hijab can be oppressive, but my people didn't invent the corset, okay? So I've got a poem about that. It's called Corsets and Heels. Stilettos, stilts, water birds waiting, spike heels, wedge heels, short Achilles, stutter step, stumble, stop, falling, sprain. Tight bodice laced up, breasts squeezed upwards, woman as hourglass, sifting sands through squished lungs, can't breathe, falling, faint. Squeeze into skinny jeans, smaller than size 6, calf muscles constricted. Tight tank top, underwire, plunge, D-cup, push up, modesty panels, hide nipples, show cleavage. Eat less, control desire, disappear, whisper, lightheaded. What was I saying? Falling, blame. Loose shalwar, boxy kurta, tell the tailor cut it loose. Belly jiggling free underneath, silk embroidered sleeves catch sunlight. Wind-blown scarf shimmers, feet firm, running away. Eat more, savor spicy deliciousness, so hot, please take more. Take space, nourish self, feed others, speak with full mouth, full body. Do not put me on display. So I had some fun with that, and I when I've read it, young women, Muslim and non-Muslim women seem to really resonate with that. So
yeah, the whole notion of modesty and somebody choosing that, and someone else having a problem with that. The more I've immersed in some of the just in my trajectory of learning more, then I go back and I turn on the TV or look what's going on any street corner and go, oh my God, this is like kind of horrific for Muslim sensibility here. Most of what's going on in the United States, that's just very in your face. So the idea that all of what you've described can be very much in everyone's face, or the expectation. What I learned in this process is very much that it's like, do you have a choice? And yes, there are women in the world who are forced to dress in ways that they did not choose, and that are oppressive. They're in an oppressive situation, and that is not the whole of what's going on.
Right. And then also many here in the West, we also don't have choices much of the time. Right, we have a capitalist fashion industry that tells us that a woman has to look like this and has to dress like this, and what's available on the racks. I don't have daughters, but my friends who have daughters have told me from when their daughters are very young, it's really hard to find good, practical, comfortable clothes in the girls section. Sometimes they go to the boys section. So,
I've definitely seen that in the younger folks in my family, and people going shopping when they were little, and I have had a lot of conversations along the way while working on this book with friends and feminist friends, and trying to think this out loud with them, and then just having people say straight out, I am prejudiced against that, like very well, people who see themselves as fighting against oppression.
Yes.
And that's, just to be able to say that and find that in ourselves and go, oh, right, I have been taught to be prejudiced against this, but I don't know enough. We're not looking enough. So anyway, it just seems like such an important gateway into this whole question of Muslims in our culture. Like, how do you respond to the hijab itself, and how do you treat the person who's wearing the hijab? I loved that in her intro, Valerie Behieri, who this whole thing was her idea, and a deep faith and belief that we could do something that would help peaceful coexistence. She talks about she is in the visual arts, and talks about going and seeing in museums, I think it was El Greco. I hope I'm saying the right thing. But just seeing Mary in the museums before before Valerie converted, like seeing Mary and realizing, oh, Mary's wearing a hijab. She's a Middle Eastern person, though they didn't call it the Middle East back then.
Right. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
So it's, how did it get like this? How did it get that this piece of cloth became something where people could be attacked
Right.
and even killed for wearing it.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, if this book does nothing else, just making some space for that we all start thinking about what happened, including that. I mean, I've learned a lot about how colonialization, Western powers colonializing countries where there was a majority of Muslims that were not Islamic states. They just had a majority of Muslims and came in and modernized, and it was like that was part of modernizing, but it was modernized according to Western sensibilities. And reclaiming self-identity has driven like putting the hijab on, a lot of women choosing to do that in a lot of countries around the world. So yeah, anyway, I'm just saying that I've learned it along the way. So as we're all looking out and trying to assess what's happening, realizing there's a range and that some of it is a matter of reclaiming culture.
Absolutely.
That was not taken away, but just like
well, that was suppressed.
Yeah,
that was
suppressed. That's the word.
Yeah. And I mean, reclaiming culture, but also reclaiming, our cultural diversity across the spectrum of the Muslim world. And one thing that the British and French were very good at was finding the weaknesses in our communities and exploiting them and sowing division, right? So I'm Indian, right? And, the British did a great job of pitting Hindu against Muslim, high caste against low caste, and just like sowing those divisions so that we are now in a deep crisis in the entire South Asian region. But also, they would, the colonial leaders would seek out the most conservative leadership that may or may not have been at the center, often was not at the center, and then bring that leadership up. So the conservatism that we see across the Muslim world is directly intertwined with colonialism.
Yeah.
I mean, not that these forces didn't exist. They did. There've always been, multiple ways of practicing and multiple ways of bringing power, infusing power into religious practice. But the British did a good job. The British, I mean, I'm Indian, so I know about the British, but they did a good job of exploiting that and propping up this conservative leadership that was anti-women and very rigid in its practice. I grew up in the South Bay in Santa Clara in the 70s and 80s. And at the time, there was a lot of Saudi influence in our Muslim communities. And there was a lot of, people would, often Saudi grad students would come into our communities and say, oh, you're not practicing this right? You need to do this, this, and this, and your kids, the boys and girls, they can't hang out together, right? Or you can't go on field trips and things like that. There was a very rigid code of conduct that they essentially using the money, but also using the ethos of being from the holy cities, right? We know best. We speak Arabic. We are from Saudi Arabia. We're going to tell you what to do, right? When actually, our communities, my community, Indian, Urdu speaking, has been practicing Islam for I don't know how many generations, many generations, going way back. And we have like a deep sense of spirituality in our own language, in the Urdu language, and in our music, in our poetry, in our food, in our, in the local traditions that are centuries old, which we were then being told, oh, that doesn't matter, and that Islam is something that is really rigid, that's without culture. Right. And that's something that I've had to work against my entire life. And I was like, when I was thinking about this conversation, I was thinking about, on the one hand, I've got to deal with American exceptionalism. The idea that America is, that many immigrants buy into, right? That we come here to make a better life, which is it's not untrue, but we then become a part of American exceptionalism, the American dream of prosperity and freedom and democracy and all of that.
The proof of that, even.
Right. So there's that, but there's also Muslim exceptionalism that we had to kind of there was another pressure that's coming at us, right? Where it's like, we are taught that Islam is the ideal, right? That if we practice Islam in this particular way, then we are somehow better than everyone else, right? So I have these two things going on, and neither one of them is correct. And we have to like find our way, I guess, to find ourselves, right? And to find out that we're none of us are exceptional,
Or we all are.
Or we all are. Either none of us are, or we all are, right? Yeah. I mean, we're all, we're all faces of the divine.
That, yes.
So however, flawed or imperfect we are, and we all are, we're all faces of the divine. And it's taken me a long time to get there to have that in my heart. But yeah. And I don't even know if I have it, but yeah.
Well, as we're wandering through this, there's other things that we wanted to read and get back to here about just how things have changed in North America and those influences. But just everything you're talking about brings up a really important aspect of this book, which is the incredible diversity that we found. I mean, it was certainly like mind-blowing to me. I don't know if it was as mind-blowing to the other two editors. Hanan Hazim is the other editor. She's both Valerie and Hanan were living in Toronto when we started into this project. Valerie actually had to move to Saudi Arabia to get a job because of the hijab.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
wow.
she tried so many places to get work at universities in Canada and gave up and moved to Saudi Arabia. So she's working there. So I'm not sure if it might have not been as shocking to them as it was to me about the diversity of the book. But maybe I can just say a little bit about.
I'd like to know about how that struck you, the diversity as the writings were coming in and you were looking at them. I mean, can you tell me about your experience?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. The first few things that I just went, whoa, this is not what anyone knows. Like one of the authors is a convert, as we say here, but revert is also used in the way Muslims talk about somebody who's not born a Muslim becoming a Muslim. So just putting that word revert out there so people know what it means when they hear it, because I'd never heard it before.
Yeah. I mean, I can explain what that means. What that means to some people, at least. It's like the idea is that when we are born into this world, we're born with a purity, right? We're born as pure beings and, reflecting the essence of Islam, right? And our work in the world is to come back to that in many ways.
So
it's
sense, yeah.
So when a person who accepts Islam refers to themselves as a revert, they're referring to themselves as coming back to an original state.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I could kind of hear it in the re part.
Yeah,
that you're coming back to something. But so one of the reverts in the book comes from ancestors who came on the Mayflower, and that was like, whoa, okay. And actually, I think on the whole, probably there's a lot more converts among the people who grew up here. On the whole, there's more of that, and that the immigrants are more people who were born Muslim, but you obviously are an exception to that. You were born here and born Muslim. Um, so yeah, just learning that range. I mean, that was one example. Another is an African American poet who wrote about her people coming over as enslaved people and being Muslims and having to hide their Muslim religion as enslaved people. And it's like, wow, I did not know that. How did I not know that?
Mm.
Just the fact that we never ever get taught that. It's never anything that was talked about, that a whole lot of the enslaved people in the Americas were Muslims. Those couple of things really struck me. That they just, like whatever we think we know it's just so much more vast and deep. I actually went back through. It's it's kind of like we've done a study, and I'm sort of, I have I'm a psychotherapist and have a degree in social psychology. So there's a part of me that's like, let's make a study of this. I went back and just to look at what are the kinds of diversity in the book, and it's like there's people from the U.S. and people from Canada. I don't even want to say American anymore. USian, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And Canadians, because the word American can be used, North American is a very embracing word. It's a very inclusive concept, but, American is a very exclusive, like that
Right.
word, in the way that Canadians are lumped in or pushed out or whatever. I just have learned how problematic that word is by itself. So there's that diversity in the book, and there's this North American born versus born someplace else and migrated here in their lifetime. And the people who were born here, it's extraordinary. Actually, one was born in Switzerland and raised in Switzerland and moved back here, but her mother, she moved to the Micmac reservation or that area because her mother was Micmac Indian from or Native American. I guess they don't generally use the word Indian in Canada. From the northeast of Canada. So that kind of combination, I was just going back and writing this out. Muslims of Irish or French ancestry whose ancestors have been here for a lot of generations. There's one 6th generation Louisiana African American and one Puerto Rican Muslim. And then among the more recent immigrants, there's Tunisians, including a 9-year-old. She's probably 10 by now. Somalians, Libyans, Kenyans, Palestinians, Lebanese, Syrians, Indians, and Pakistanis, and one Bosnian. So it's really just way broader than I ever would have imagined. It's just, almost every single thing that came in blew my mind that way about the diversity.
Yeah.
And then, this question of whether you're Muslim born or a convert, revert. And the other kind of diversity in the book is how many kinds of voices, just in terms of genres, that there's there's poetry, there's memoir, there's short story, there's essays, and there's fantasy, there's science fiction, there's, this whole question of people want to kind of expect Muslims to write about Muslimness. Is Hanan Hazim, one of the editors, really addresses that in her introduction about being expected to talk about your, talk from that perspective. Or one of the authors yesterday, I wrote it down. I guess I didn't write it down, but just the notion that you don't have to write about your harm and hurt.
Yeah.
You can just write, as one of the authors does, about chocolate cake,
Right,
that
right,
Muslims
right.
also just get to
Yeah.
write about, like,
Yeah.
just human stuff. So that whole range
Right.
of, like, some of it is, very prayerful, giving you the feeling of the spirituality from inside of a Muslim way of viewing. And others, are not addressing that at all. Some address really deep concepts about how Muslims view what happens after you die, like that that it
Yeah.
doesn't stop. What you've done in this life continues after you leave this life, and that really matters. Like the things you've planted in this life, just things like that are very related to the concepts and not related to any sort of oppression or whatever. So
Right.
anyway, this whole range of themes
Yeah.
like that was.
Yeah.
So moving and enlightening.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. I really, I really appreciate the range, and I've read some of the work. I've kind of flipped through the book, and I'm really looking forward to sitting down with it. Especially when we had that beautiful conversation yesterday with all the contributors, many of the contributors, not all of the contributors. That was just a really, just a beautiful conversation, and this book appears to be, a starting point. It appears to be the beginning of something new that might take a life of its own, and I really appreciate that. And Kitty, what I appreciate about you and your role in this book is your curiosity. And what I feel when it comes to myself as a Muslim, it's essentially an exercise. For most of my life, it's an exercise in either invisibility or anger. And sometimes creativity, but obviously this work is coming out of that as well. So, and there's, there's plenty of joy in being Muslim. I won't deny any of that. There's joy, there's family, there's food, there's, all kinds of good things and parties. But until in my life, until we got to 1979, I had a sense of otherness, a sense of difference, but not yet a sense of hostility, right? The hostility, and I think for depending on our generation, there's something that is that moment. For me, it was the Iranian Revolution and hostage crisis. For some people, it was that whole crisis with Salman Rushdie in 1988. I can't remember what year that was. I was a college student at the time, and we were doing all kinds of things around that, which I don't need to get into right now.
But that there were Muslim leaders saying that he should be killed for writing satanic verses.
Right. So Imam Khomeini of Iran said that put a bounty on Rushdie's head, and that's a horrible thing. And but the backlash that came after that, the anti-Muslim attacks that came after that were pretty horrible. And then there's 9/11, and so each generation has its own kind of reckoning with, what does it mean to be Muslim in the United States, right? And there are a couple of things that happen with that. On the one hand, there's terror. There's real terror that comes after a Muslim commits an act of violence or says or says something violent or threatens violence, right? Then there's then there's like an attack on the entire community, right? And then we have to reckon with that. But then there's another thing that happens in relation to that, where there's this, amongst, literate and progressive people, there's this curiosity that comes with that. And in the wake of that, on the one hand, there's this vulnerability. On the other hand, there's this visibility. So it's interesting. So after 9/11, there are signs going up in my neighborhood saying, we stand with our Muslim neighbors, right? And after the Muslim ban, we have that as well, right? I love my Muslim neighbors and all of that. And then there's this desire to in San Francisco, in liberal San Francisco, in amongst in my workplace, there's this desire to be fair. There's this desire to be just, right? And I very much appreciate that. At the same time, there's still a profound lack of curiosity in terms of what it is to be Muslim, what it is to be me, living as a Muslim. It's just like, I don't want to be Islamophobic. It's like, I appreciate that, thank you, but where can we take this? Because not wanting to offend only gets us so far, right? My cousin lives in Charlottesville, Virginia, and her experience as a Muslim in Charlottesville is very different from mine. I mean, on the surface level, on a deeper level, it's kind of the same. So when she, when her kids face Islamophobia at school, there's almost no recourse, right? Because, you've got the teachers, you've got the administration, you've got everybody. And you have a power structure of a school that holds, your child's grades and your child's future, essentially, right? When my son experienced Islamophobia at school, it was coming from his classmates. And I was able to go to the teacher and say, this happened. And she was able to, she said, she was horrified. She said, I'm horrified that happened. And I'm so sorry. So sorry. And so to be able to have that, I really feel, I feel seen when that, and I feel some compassion, and I feel a desire to do good. And I think that really matters.
Yeah, no, I really feel the emotion that brings up for you of having your child go through that and taking actions that actually helped. And that somebody actually was listening. That's such a big part of this book. Maybe I can we have about 10 minutes, and I just wanted to make sure to get into, we're going to not be able to do as much as we were hoping to, but I just wanted to get into a little bit about what the sections are of the book. And like the first section, mostly they're named after one of the pieces that in that section. The first one's Shout Out, and it's like the piece that I read about the hijab is part of that section, but also there's so that's more like, hey, look, we got to get in your face a little bit to see, but there's also a lot of appreciation of when people have stepped up as allies. There's really, incredibly beautiful, moving pieces about that. Anyway, I'll just leave it for people to read more about that. But the sections in general, the way it fell out was like those kinds of saying thank you. This feels so good, like the teacher that you're describing. Like, oh, thank goodness she was there. There isn't one in Charlottesville, right?
Yeah.
Like how much that matters. So just reading that it just helps you find your way or know how much it could make a difference to be there for somebody. So that's in the first section. Then Finding Home is the second section, which is mostly people who are more recent immigrants. It includes one writer who's Somali American. There's a couple of Somali Americans, but just his experience of growing up here, but then going back to reclaim his. I should just read what it says. Like things he lost on the road to American assimilation, the identity he lost on the road to American assimilation, and coming back through the airport at JFK and what that was like. It's just so powerful to put yourself in that, in those shoes, and just know what it feels like to be seen as somebody who's dangerous, like to live inside of that and try to, have your own identity with the world looking at you that way. But then once you're here, you're seen as an African American in a way that you're not. I mean, it's so confusing inside of any one individual, the diversity inside of any one individual. Yeah, and then a section called "Home is Here." That's people who grew up, or their families are from here for many generations. Um, I've already talked about some of those examples. African Americans whose ancestors were Muslims, or people whose ancestors. Well, anyway, I'll just go on with the time we have here. There's one
Yeah.
called Blood Harmonies that you have a piece in about a couple pieces about your grandfather and your son, but it's about family connections. The Home I Left is people reflecting on their homeland that they moved away from, and the people and culture back there. Under the Blue Tent is from children's points of view, some stories about people's childhoods, or like one poem from, as I was saying earlier, 9-year-old Mariam Sabri. And the last section is called Ocean of Humanity, that is the more prayerful, mystical, spiritual pieces. So just to give people the feel of that range of the types of pieces that are in the book. Let's see. We're not going to have time for the... we were going to have you read from your piece, Love in Dark Times. It was about your family, just being with your extended family as the results of the 2016 election were coming in. And that's why it's called Love in Dark Times. I don't know, you might have a little something to say about that before we...
Yeah, I can say a couple things about that. This was it's an essay, actually. Most of my work is poetry, but this is an essay that I wrote after or basically right after the 2016 election, which, during that time period, during actually the day of the election, my aunties and uncles were visiting from, were staying with my parents, and we had a family gathering, and we didn't really expect, I think I knew it was a possibility, but we didn't really expect Trump to win. And we're all together, my parents actually, and my aunties and uncles were all together, and I was in San Francisco, and we were just like, and so it's like a meditation on what that meant, what our history in this country has meant in that moment, and looking at, my family. The essay starts with love stories, with my uncle asking everybody, well, how did you meet, and what happened, and and kind of getting my dad to to talk about my mom. So it's cute. and then it starts there, and then it comes to what are we doing, what happened, what just happened, and what's going to happen. I think the terror of what's going to happen. And obviously what did happen, but at that moment it was, and coming back to how are we going to get through this? And I'm looking at the people around me, the people like Eric in this bookstore, who are a part of our communities, and we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this now as we come out of those 4 years of crisis, with community, with love, and with community. So that's what that essay is, and please get the book and read it.
Yeah,
read it
yeah.
yourself.
No, it's been so wonderful.
Yeah,
The Muslim ban is lifted, but there's so
Yeah.
much more going on. Where
Right.
There's a lot to learn about how the othering is happening, and the
Right.
legal kinds of battles that are in the works that are trying to, make special cases for
Yeah.
Muslims that
Yeah.
don't exist
Yeah.
for everyone else. So, but
Yeah.
Well, and I know. You teach at City College.
I do.
And
Yeah.
before we ended,
Okay.
just wanted to give you a chance to talk. Especially this whole series is intended to be focused on local stuff, and this has been a little far afield and coming back, both.
Yeah.
But one of the things I just wanted to mention is that the publisher Freedom Voices started out at the Tenderloin, and the mission is to publish works that speak to and from communities on the margins. So that was actually when Valerie Behieri heard me talking about Freedom Voices was when she decided to reach out and say, "Do you want to do this book?" So anyway, you can buy the book from Burden Beckett certainly, and or you can also go online at if you're not local, you can go online and get it from freedomvoices.org. So yeah, tell us that there's quite a crisis going on
Yeah.
in community education here.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
tell us
Yeah.
about that as we're.
Yeah. So I teach at City College. I actually am not teaching right now because we've had such major cutbacks. But so if you know anything about City College and about its role in San Francisco, we have something for everyone. We teach transfer level classes, but we also teach community-based classes. We teach disabled students classes, theater for people with disabilities. We teach auto mechanics and airline maintenance and nursing. So all of these programs are under attack right now. Our administration has given out 163 pink slips to full-time faculty. And that's 1/3 of our full-time faculty. And in order for full-time faculty to be laid off, that necessarily means that part-time faculty are laid off. So we're talking about a cut of nearly 60% of our total teaching faculty, which means closing down, shutting students out of classes that are in high demand, right? Including nursing. You know, they were saying now we're not going to accept a new cohort of nurses. We take a cohort of nursing students once every semester. Now it's going to be once a year. We're in a pandemic. We need our nurses, right? So I'm asking folks out there, you know, to follow us, hashtag IMCCSF, follow AFT 2121, which is my union, our union at City College of San Francisco, right? Can I read this poem? Yeah?
Yeah, I think we have
All right.
time. Yeah.
So I got a poem, and this is actually a poem that I wrote after the gathering when I first met Kitty at in my classroom, in my Poetry for the People classroom. So it's called Maya Angelou. It was a celebration for Maya Angelou. It's called Maya Angelou at City College of San Francisco, Poetry Month 2019. We are poets for the people, gathered tight in a City College classroom, in the presence of Maya Angelou, resurrected by memory and love. We rise to speak her words in Tagalog, in Portuguese, Urdu, Spanish, French, Chinese. We rise in Hawaiian, in Tigrinya, in Arabic, in Japanese. With drum beats and guitar strums, we speak her words, witness 400 years of resistance, and emerge in silver sequins like our ancestor, the fish, rising out of the ocean to start life anew. Poets for the people, we seek that maternal heartbeat of the earth, holding us close then lifting us up. In these new nights of terror, what choice do we have? Poets must do what poets do. We rise. Yes, they want to see us broken. They always have. They want to shut us down. They want to shut us up. But we are poets for the people. A black ocean swelling with truth. And Maya Angelou, in the great beyond, we have her poem, and we rise. So this is what City College does. Oh, thank you. This is what community college does. It brings us up. It helps us rise. And so we need to stand up and fight for it, just like we needed to fight for over the last 4 years for our own humanity, right? So I want to just put that out there to the community. I also just want to mention that I'm teaching a class through City College Extension starting the first week of April. Kitty took one of my classes. It was so amazing. It's a 5-week, really relaxing conversational type of class called Bearing Witness, Turning History into Poetry. So you can check that out on the City College website. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to end with a wish and a prayer that people have helped to find their voices and express what needs to be said. That Tamina helps do so beautifully with people who don't feel confidence. It was, yeah. Anyway, and just people getting to hear each other. Just wishing for that to powerfully go forward. Thank you for the contribution you make to that, and we really hope that this book is a big contribution to people feeling like their voices can be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about finding a public voice, whether it's at City College or in this book.
Well,
Yeah.
and to,
Yeah.
I mean, I have the good fortune to just having worked in various ways with Freedom Voices over the years, to have sort of a microphone to hand to other people a little bit. So if you have any sort of microphone to hand to other people, yeah, please give room for people whose voices need to be heard, that are being misunderstood. Yeah, anyway, and just wishing for this book to go out in the world and create more peaceful coexistence and understanding among all of us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Kitty. And thank you, Eric.
Indeed.
This bookstore has been a lifeline to me over the past 22 years.
Yes.
I've been here since the very beginning.
In 2 months.
Oh, okay, right. So almost 22 years. My kid has grown up in this bookstore. We probably bought every dinosaur book that Eric stacked, and all the Harry Potters, and beyond. So
I didn't
so
even
grateful.
know that when I invited you,
Yeah.
but it's very fun to have you guys go, oh, hey, how you doing, Eric? Hey, Tamina.
Yeah. So grateful to Eric and so grateful to Burton Beckett.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you both very, very much for this
Yeah.
conversation this morning. Can't thank you enough, and I'm sure the people out there got a huge amount from it. So we'll leave it there. Thanks to the publishers and the poets and the educators and the activists and all that, and to Jenna Littlejohn, who's been
Thank
helping
you,
put this on.
Jenna. Yeah, absolutely.
Y'all take care.